What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Gaming, your weekly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. My name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys each and every week for returning to the show. I hope you have subscribed on iTunes or Google Play. That way you get each new episode every single Tuesday. Also, feel free to leave us a review. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, so that way we can make this show better each and every week. This week on the show, we have our guest. His name is Tyler Watson. I met this man on the Comedy Button Facebook group, and he's actually been one of the bigger supporters of the show. As soon as I put the Facebook group out there, he was right on it. He was very enthusiastic to be on the show, so finally got him on the show to tell his story. If you guys want to be on the show, go ahead and feel free to send me a tweet at GUG Podcast on Twitter, or go ahead and send me a tweet personally at MitchPower1116. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. Without further ado, let's get things started with Tyler Watson. Do you remember what actually got you started doing gaming? Like, do you remember, was there any friends, or did you just see it at a store? Do you remember what actually got you interested in gaming in the first place?
So, when I was about 4 or so, my mom and I moved down here to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We were in around the Jackson area, about 3 hours north, and my mom had just divorced this guy she had married, and my grandmother was going through her cancer treatments, so we moved down here to help take care of her. Well, the lady that lived across the street was a friend of my grandmother's, and she had some grandkids who were older than me, and so my grandmother would go over there and visit her and take me with her. And she said, we've got a thing over there around the corner that my grandkids play if you want to play it. And I didn't realize at the time it was an Atari 2600. And the very first game that I play is E.T.
Oh my God,
and you think with it being notoriously one of the worst games ever made,
right,
it turned me off. But I played it several times, and about a year earlier I discovered the Super Mario Brothers Super Show without ever playing or seeing a Nintendo, knowing what it was. But I remember being at home with chicken pox watching it, and I can even remember the episode. It's the James Bond parody episode where they're like driving a truck, and one of the little gadgets in the car is that they pull a lever and like pasta sauce covers the road like an oil slick. Like, I can remember all of that. So I played that E.T. a few times, and then for Christmas 1990, I'm 5 years old, my mom gets me an NES, the action set with the Mario Duck Hunt and the Orange Zapper.
Yep.
And that started it. Just from there on, I've been obsessed with gaming.
Did you have any siblings or anything that were interested in with you, or were you an only child, or did you actually have like other friends that would come over and hang out and play some stuff with you as well?
I've been an only child for a little while, up until 96. My little brother's never really been that interested in it. He got a PS2 with a couple of games, but he's never been that too into it. My stepbrother, not as much into it as I was, but pretty into it. He had an NES for a little bit, and he had a PS1. And the poor guy, he's the reason why I will really never buy third-party controllers. He had a PS1. He had one of the old Mad Catz controllers.
Right.
Well, eventually, his PlayStation stopped accepting any other controller inputs but that one. Then it took out his memory card reader, so he couldn't save anything. And then it started to lose that controller reading. So eventually what he had to do is duct tape the wire to the back of the controller for it to even read, and eventually it just stopped. And the PlayStation was just dead in the water. And he never got anything gaming-wise again until the PS3 came out.
That's crazy. I remember my brother-in-law had a situation where I think it was it was on PS2 as well. It was a headset, like a USB headset that they had back in the day for chatting on PS2 back when that was like super new at the time. And there was a headset that every time you plugged it in the USB port, it like wrecked the system. It wrecked that USB port. And it sucked because he literally tested this headset on and I used to work at a game store with him. We tested it on 3 or 4 different PS2s, and they broke all of them. So we had to junk them all out and everything. But yeah, it's so weird with the third party stuff. That's why, of course, back in the day, I didn't have as much money. So, of course, everybody had one third-party controller that was all jank and nobody liked it and everybody hated it. But, yeah, like shorting out the system's ports, like, and that's even worse because you can't even go get an awesome controller. You're kind of stuck with using that garbage controller because that's the only one that'll work.
Yeah, and eventually he was just like, I'm not going to do this. Eventually, I think he just jumped the PlayStation altogether. It took it about a year or two for that to finally happen, but yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, especially with the memory card. Like, of course, wrecking the memory card slot, you're not saving anything, so I hope you like playing a lot of games over and over again. Like, that would just suck, man. Like, I wonder if there was ever, I mean, of course you see like there's third party stuff that's out there that's at least officially licensed, so it's not, but that's also like back in the PS2 era where it was way more Wild West, like anybody and their mother could make a controller and didn't have to be authorized or any of that shit. So yeah, I'm sure you ran across those types of things and everything when it comes to that. And then, so you did Nintendo, and then, so you didn't really play much with your siblings just because they weren't into it as much and everything. Did you kind of progress going the Nintendo route and everything, or did you become a Sega kid?
Those playground wars that everyone had, Sega versus Nintendo, I was squarely in the Nintendo camp, but I've, quote unquote, flirted with Sega every so often. I had a couple of friends who had a Genesis, and I was like, all right, this is kind of neat. Hold on. And so I knew one guy that had only really had two games. He had Sonic 2 and Power Rangers the movie. And playing Sonic 2, and I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. Hold on. So I got a Super Nintendo for Christmas the next year in 91, and I finally got a Genesis for Christmas of 96, which I think is the last year that they were putting them out. So my mom and my stepdad at that point got me the Genesis with, I got a Sonic game, but I got Sonic 3D Blast, along with like Super WrestleMania and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. And I loved playing that thing. And I finally just went out, and once I had a little bit of my own money, went out and bought a copy of Sonic 2. And I was like, yeah, this is fun. And I've now got, not only do I have the Genesis now, I've got a Sega CD now and a Saturn and a Dreamcast. Actually, the Dreamcast was the first system I bought with my own money once I had gotten a job later on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I felt bad for the CD and the Saturn because those were kind of like, those were in a weird era. Those were like like CD came out, but then like shortly after Saturn came out, but then like Saturn didn't last very long before Dreamcast came out. Like, it was just really weird when Sega was like trying to get as much life out of the Genesis as they could, like just trying to squeeze every bit of life out of that Genesis. Then eventually Saturn, but then like, it was just a really weird time because I don't even remember ever playing on a Saturn. I just remember playing like Genesis and like 32X stuff and then jumping straight to Dreamcast. Like, I don't even remember, of course my brother-in-law had it, but like I didn't know him at the time, but like I don't remember ever playing a Genesis. Like, it was, or I'm sorry, not Genesis, a Saturn. But yeah, I remember like everybody talked about how Knights was awesome, but that's like, that and Panzer Dragoon, I guess, were like the two good games. But other than that, it's like, I don't know, but I never played it. Also, too, Sonic 3D Blast, that's like, it's cool that you got the Genesis late in its life cycle because you had a good selection of games to choose from. Like, at least, that's always the good thing about getting a console at the end of its life cycle is like, you have so many games to choose from. You have so many awesome games to go back and get and check out and everything. But I remember like I had all the Sonics, 1, 2, 3 Knuckles, and then I remember 3D Blast, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not a fan of this. Like, just the whole isometric 3D, like sorta fake 3D-esque, it looked just kind of weird.
I think it's because it was the only one that I had that I've kind of developed Stockholm Syndrome with it because I actually like it. Like, when I bought a Saturn, one of the first games I bought was Sonic 3D Blast for the Saturn.
Oh my god.
But yeah, I never played a Saturn or a CD either. Like, I don't even think I'd ever even seen them in the stores. But I just kind of found out about them, through magazines, and then later on I was like, I've got a little extra money now. I'm an adult, I'll just go and buy these real quick. I actually found them pretty cheap too. I think I got the CD for about $40 at at a flea market around here, and a buddy of mine just helped fix it so it would read the lasers right. And I think the Saturn I got for about $20-$30 too.
Yeah, I mean, especially, well, yeah, the Saturn, I mean, like I said, like when at least you didn't buy them when they first came out because they were a couple $100s. They were kind of ridiculous. But yeah, now you can go back and, kind of relive that stuff relatively cheaply as long as you find one that's in working condition. Because, yeah, I mean, you're talking
that's the
first-gen CD-ROM systems with that old laser, and yeah, have fun trying to find one that works. Or at least if you know how to replace it yourself, then you could do that. But yeah, that's OG, very first gen, well, at least Sega CD and stuff. Saturn was a little bit more, developed and everything with the lasers at that time. But yeah, Sega CDs, yeah, that was like new stuff at that time.
So here's another funny story, speaking of early CD-ROM, is the 3DO. So the local Walmart we would go to, I'd go to one of two places while my mom was shopping. Either go to Toys and check out the new action figures, or I'd go to Electronics and play, the demo games that were up. So I'd play, Mario 64 and a couple Super Nintendo games while it was up. But I remember Walmart having a 3DO demo with Gex, and I never actually saw them sell a 3DO. Like, I don't think there were any in stock, but there was a demo unit you could play, so I pretty much had the first 2 levels of Gex burned into my memory.
Yeah, that's the demo unit side things was always fun too, because that's how I was with Mario 64 for the longest time before I actually ended up getting my own, like my sister actually ended up getting a 64 later on. But yeah, that's how I was with Mario, like, you just go to the stores, and yeah, I was the same kid as you. I was either, I'm going to go check out what Star Wars figures they got going on, or I'm going to go to the video game section. So that's pretty much how it was. And then when there was a Star Wars video game, it was like the greatest thing of both worlds. Like,
it's all over at that point.
Yeah, when you get your two things. I remember the Power Rangers, the movie, the game, because that was literally the name of the game. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the game. And I remember that. I remember also just the standard regular Power Rangers game that my mom got super pissed that I beat in like 30 minutes because it was just a side-scrolling beat-em-up. It wasn't like,
I had that same one.
Yeah, and I remember just I felt super bad because I'm sure my mom hunted for that game, probably overpaid way too much for it, and then I beat it in 30 minutes, and she was probably super pissed. But oh well, I mean, you can keep doing it over and over if you like, but to a kid, just to beat a game in like 30 minutes. And of course I'm a kid who I'm just like, I want to play something else now. She was probably just like, what the hell? Why did I do this?
Yeah, I was the same way. I would play it over and over, especially if I really liked it. But eventually it was just like, all right, now I've run through this. I know we can't, buy a new game right now. Can we go to Blockbuster this weekend?
Right. The Blockbuster trip. 'Cause that was the other thing too, back in the day.
And that was where you would find just those oddball games that you'd never see again. Like, the only time I ever played Mega Man 7 was renting it from Blockbuster. And I probably played it a couple of times before I just never rented it again. And I don't know why, because now Mega Man is probably my favorite, is my favorite, video game character, if not my favorite franchise.
Did you ever play the older ones on Nintendo, like regular just NES?
The first one I was exposed to was Mega Man 5, and my mom took me over to a friend of hers house. Her teenager had a NES, and he was playing Mega Man 5. And I had like a special edition of GamePro magazine where they had a walkthrough for it. So I was like, oh, hey, check this out. Oh, we can do this. And I was like, so that was my actual very first experience to it. And I went straight from 5 to 7, and then went back a couple of years later and got some of the other ones, like 1 and 2, and no, I didn't have 3.
Well, I mean, at least you went back and did get a chance to experience them and everything, because that was one franchise I honestly completely missed. Like, it just, none of my friends were playing it. It just wasn't on my radar. It was just one of those, and everybody loves it. Everybody talks about it now and how fond it is. And, obviously whenever they make a new collection, people buy the hell out of it. But yeah, that's just one that I just seem to miss entirely. Like, and not saying it's bad or I didn't like it or anything. It's just one that, like, literally I didn't find out about it until I was much older, that this franchise was awesome. And yeah, I was more a Genesis kid anyways. Like after Nintendo, I was like Genesis, and then I went to PlayStation. But like, yeah, the whole Mega Man thing kind of I missed out on. So I look back on them now, though. I mean, you know, I watch Let's Plays. You know, when I was watching Kind of Funny, and like Colin Moriarty would go through and just show how quote unquote easy they are, and then everybody else would struggle their ass off trying to beat them. So yeah, I you know, it sucks because that's one of the things that I like about this show is because some people expose me to games that I've never heard of, or probably would have never heard of. You know, and there's also games I've played too that people are like, what the hell is that? So, I mean, that's always fun. So then you went Genesis, and then did you say you kept going the Genesis, like the Sega route then, or did you actually end up getting a PlayStation?
I went to PS1 next, and I think that was 98, I believe. And I'd gotten Tenchu Stealth Assassins and WWF Warzone were my two games for that.
Dude, Warzone was awesome.
Yeah, both that and Attitude, they're terrible to look back on now, but they were so much fun then.
Yeah, and they were also, at the time, like, really next level stuff with like, because it was so weird because if you look back now and think of it, it's like, because there was Warzone, there was all like the PlayStation WWE games, or WWF at the time, and then there was the 64 games, which were entirely different. Like, you look at like Warzone, Attitude, SmackDown, and then you go back and look at other games, you know, on 64, No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, you know, like, all those are just so different. But yeah, I was definitely one of those kids that was calling Walmart every single day. Do you guys have Warzone? Do you guys have War? Like, I was just one of those kids that would not. I'm sure the Walmart people hated me, but yeah, dude, Warzone was that was like the first wrestling game I remember getting. Of course, back then wrestling was insane. Like, everybody I knew watched wrestling, so you know, the Warzone games, or Warzone for particular, was it was just one of those games. Like, again, same thing, when a hobby of yours or a character of yours you like gets into a video game, it's just the best of everything, and we wouldn't stop playing Warzone for a while.
Yeah, my first day of junior high, I wore a Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt to school. So yeah, I was way deep in it. Yeah.
No, I mean, I just remember at one point in time, like, you couldn't even buy a wrestling shirt unless you like went to an event. Like, you know, like you couldn't just go into, and then eventually they started selling them in like normal stores, like where you can just go buy stuff. But yeah, I remember.
Or you had to order one off of a special 1-800 number they'd show on TV.
Yeah, and convincing your parents, hey, Mom, can you call this number and give them your credit card? They're like, hey, stupid, I'm not doing that. What are you talking about? But then you go into Walmarts now and you can just buy wrestling shirts wherever. So I remember that being a big deal. As soon as I remember seeing them in stores, I was like, oh, I got to get a shirt now. Like, everybody had that shirt. Or you actually went to the event, and that's how you knew who went to the events and who didn't because of the shirt they had.
Yeah, because we live in such a, not remote area, but we do live in such a, trying to think of the right word for it.
Less populated town.
Yeah, there we go. It doesn't come through here that often, so I've only actually been to one live event, and that was a Raw in 1997. And I think that may be in where I got that shirt. But we got the WWE Network, and I was like, hold on, let me check and see if that Raw's on here. And sure enough, when we had gotten it, they had only loaded up 2 Monday Night Raws from 1997, and that one just happened to be one of them, so I just sat and watched it again.
Yeah, I remember, I live in a town, I lived in Rockford, Illinois, which is like, I think it's like the 3rd biggest city in Illinois, but also it's like, you know, it's like 200,000 people or something like that. Like, it's not too many people, but like, same thing, like, they would have, you know, most of the events would be in Chicago, not Rockford. But then when they came to Rockford, everybody was like losing their mind. It was such a big deal. So like, I remember going to one event that I believe was a Raw. And then I think I went to an event that was just one of those live events. Like, it wasn't a televised anything, you know, just one of the house shows that they used to do. But yeah, I remember doing like one Raw, and it was cool. But that was like the only one I ever went to. What's funny is later on in life, I actually worked at the Metro Center, which is where they held the events. And I actually got to tear down, like I was one of the crew guys, and I got to help tear down the ring, which was, I was like in the ring and I was kind of freaking out for a minute, like had a fanboy moment. I was
that's cool.
I was like, holy crap, I'm in the ring right now. This is nuts. But then I was like, basically they were like, hey asshole, tear that down. You can't just stand here and stare at everything. We gotta get to work. I'm like, all right, you're right. So quickly came back to reality. But yeah, dude, Warzone. And I remember Attitude coming out, and it was just, again, it's just the progression of the wrestling games around that time. They were just awesome. And then, of course, they got to the point where they were just like, hey, let's kick these things out every single year and then just make tons of money off these kids who just want to keep telling their parents to buy it every year.
Exactly. I haven't bought one in a while, but I'm definitely looking at 2K18 this year.
Yeah, it's funny because they're fun games, but then I got to a point where, because, I mean, I'm sure you had the same thing, where when those games came out, they were awesome because of all the creative stuff, right? And it became like literally a sub menu. Like create a wrestler was first. Then it was like create an entrance, create a moveset, create a this, create a, all this. It got to a point though where when the games came out, I almost dreaded getting it because I knew that all 5 of my friends that were playing it would want to create everything. Like you would, and then one guy gets the controller and goes, all right, cool, man, I'm going to create my guy. And then it was 7 hours later and he's like, all right, I'm almost done. I'm like, well, dude, what the fuck are you doing, man? We are standing here just watching you, waiting for you to finish while the next person takes another 7 hours to do their character. Like that was the only bad part about it, is that stuff didn't just transfer to the new game. Like you had to basically start from scratch. But again, it was awesome because you had all this new shit you could do, like all these new things you could customize. But yeah, dude, that initial, I'd say the first 3 or 4 days of a new wrestling game were just torture because we would just spend way too long creating stuff.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but the new Fire Pro Wrestling that's out now, I've seen a lot of people making just every type of creative thing you can. Like I've seen people have Mickey Mouse versus Donald Duck. I've seen people make Bret Hart as his appearance in The Simpsons.
Oh my god. Yeah, and they get kind of crazy now because they're so detailed and like graphics are just getting better and better and all the stuff you can do. Like I see some of the creative stuff now and I'm just like blown away. I'm like, holy crap. Like, and I'm kind of in the same boat with you. Like I enjoy the wrestling games because they're just, what's funny now is like now they're tamer just because, now it's the PG era or whatever where they don't have all the crazy violent stuff anymore. Right. But then what's funny is the games almost in a way are like your way to do that. Like you could still fully smash somebody with a chair or a sledgehammer or do all this crazy shit. Whereas now in, the actual show, they try to keep it more tame, but I love when they keep referencing in the new games like Attitude Era stuff. I'm like, hell yeah, you guys know what's up. You guys know when it was good. Like, you guys know.
That's what we grew up on, man.
Exactly. And that's like, dude, I remember that was like your water cooler moment. Like every Monday night, you would flip back and forth between that Raw and Nitro, and then Tuesday morning, you would come back and just be like, holy crap, can you believe this? Like, it was insane, like school back in the day. And then they did release on Xbox One, they did have Games with Gold. They did have and I think it was 2K16, I want to say. They put on Games of Gold, and I was so happy because it's like, man, it's been so long since I played a wrestling game. I can't wait to get in here and do this. And then I quickly realized that they're very different now, and I suck. And I played my friend Joe, who like still plays them actively, and he completely beat the shit out of me. And I'm just like, well, these games maybe aren't for me anymore. Like, I'm just not that good at them anymore. But yeah, dude, like we had, our own pay-per-views, our own, seasons, our own storylines. And then it's funny because that became a thing. Like, create your own event, create your own storyline. I'm like, holy shit, all the things they did in those games.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's basically like how RPG Maker was. That's basically what it is now. Like how you can literally make your own everything. So you can create your own dude from scratch and do all that. Again, if there was a way to, now you can download, I think you can download created wrestlers off the internet, which is awesome. So that way you can just have somebody who knows what they're doing take their time and do it right, whereas I can't create shit. Like that's the one thing with me, like now with games, is that I don't think, there's a lot of games out there where you can create stuff, Little Big Planet where you can create your own levels. I was just playing Trials Fusion where you can create, all the creative stuff is cool. I'm just not creative enough to do it. But if you can let me download other people's shit, I'm down. So.
Yeah, I'm not that creative either, which is weird because I like creative games. Like, I love, like, Mario Paint and Super Mario Maker from a couple of years ago. Like, I got Mario Maker day one. I think I made a grand total of 2 levels and just played everybody else's.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, as long as you can, if you can create your own stuff, I guess that's cool. But if the best thing is downloading other people's cool shit, like, oh, I can download all their stuff. All right, that's what I care about. So that's what I want to do. So then obviously you had PS1. Did you just continue that PlayStation route then?
Yeah, I got a PS2 next. And like I said, once I was actually able to get a job and actually get my own money, the first things I bought is I bought a Dreamcast and I bought a Game Boy Advance SP.
Okay, so then was that your first handheld?
No, I had the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color as well. So it kind of worked how, if getting a new game was, a big thing because they were much more expensive then than they are now. So if I would get a new game, it would be one console game on birthday, one console game on Christmas, and then Game Boy game or 2 at Easter. And that would be, so I'd probably get about 3 games a year, and I would just play every single one of them obsessively.
Yeah, I was kind of in that same route as well, where I had the birthday, like, the good thing about my birthday is it was in June, so like it was halfway through the year, I got a birthday game, Christmas got a game, so it was kind of like the best of both worlds and everything. So I always felt bad for people that had birthdays in like December. Like, that sucks because you always got screwed. No matter how often they would try not to do that, you did. Like, or they would combo it up.
Your birthday and Christmas are the same thing.
Yeah, and it just sucks because it's like, you always feel bad for people like that and everything. So it's like, my brother-in-law's birthday is so close to Christmas. I'm sure it was one of those like, well, we're going to get you one big gift instead of getting 2 separate ones, or you had to wait for a whole year before you got stuff. So I'm sure that was the case.
And I remember one of my favorite Game Boy games I got was I discovered Pokemon at like 13, already way too old for the franchise. And I was like, I need to get this. This looks cool as heck. And so I got it. I got Pokemon Blue. And just played it and played it and played it, and I was like, "This is the greatest thing ever." So I remember reading in magazines like, "Oh, they're coming out with a Pokemon 2?" I was like, so I saved every little bit of money that I'd gotten from relatives for birthdays and Christmases. So I had everything saved up so that when they came out, I had spent all my own money that I'd saved up over like the past year or so, and bought Pokemon Gold and Silver, plus the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide for it, all with my own ones. That's like really the first thing I'd ever bought with my own money. And I started with Silver, played it all the way through, then went straight on to Gold and played it all the way through.
Yeah, I remember so you actually ended up getting both games then, and just like played them both?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. I never had both, but I remember you always had to have the buddy though. That's what I had to do. I had to make sure what was my friends getting. Like, hey, which one are you trying to get? Oh, I'm going to get Gold. Cool, I'll get Silver. Like, that was my thing. Like, I personally, my son, on the other hand, he's different. He was able to get both and everything, but he was one of those that he beat the first one and he's like, no, I got to go back and do the other one. But I was never like that. But yeah, I had to have friends that definitely had to I just had to make sure whatever my friends had, I had the other one. So that was the only thing I had to rule on.
At that time, I was the only person that I knew that was into it that was of my age. Everyone else is kind of like, I don't know about that. That seems kind of kiddie. And I'm like, you guys don't know what you're missing. This is great.
Yeah, it's an awesome RPG. There's nothing wrong with that. So then, when it came to Pokemon, so you didn't really have anybody else. So you never did like linking up cables, battles, anything like that?
Not really, no. I mean, I still had my old Game Boy, and because those weren't color exclusives just yet, so I was able to, get a link cable and just link my Game Boy and my Game Boy Color together to trade between the two.
Right. Did you ever complete a Pokédex?
Yeah, I've actually not. I completed the one in Gold and Silver only because of that miraculous little Game Shark.
Right.
So there was a couple of things. So I made sure I got, the hidden ones that you couldn't get in either game. So,
right.
So I got those. And recently I completed the Pokedex in Sun and Moon for 3DS.
That's cool.
And by this point, I've actually found friends who are into it just as obsessively as I am. So I was the first one of us to actually finish it, and they were like, "Dude, hold on." One of my friends was like, tapped his girlfriend on the shoulder, was like, "Look, you completed the Pokedex." She's like, "That's pretty awesome."
Yeah, like I was one of those. I'm a grown ass man. I have a grown ass man job where adults work, and I remember when. What was the one before Sun and Moon? Like, it was on 3DS. I'm trying to remember. I'm blanking.
X and Y.
X and Y, yeah. So I remember getting Pokemon X, and another guy knew who I helped to get him the job at my job. We were basically on break together, playing Pokemon X in the break room, battling each other. And I'm sure there was grown-ass people that were walking by us just going, are they fucking playing Pokemon on their lunch break right now? This is ridiculous. Like, we were just sitting there at the table with our 3DS just playing. So, yeah, that was I'm sure I got some awkward stares for that, but who the hell cares? Those games are good. Yeah.
Me and a friend of mine, we used to work at Walmart together, and because he worked the later shift than I did. He came in right after the shift after me, the overnight one. So after I would get off, I would hang around for about an hour, wait for him to go to lunch, and we would play each other in, Diamond and Pearl and Platinum.
Mm-hmm.
But that same guy he's now my best friend, and we, me, him, his girlfriend at the time, and my wife, we all went together to a convention in New Orleans, and we did the whole weekend. So we split a room at a hotel, and so we've got some downtime, so we're in the room, and he and I are playing. I'm like, hold on, I got to go to the bathroom. So I take the DS with me onto the John, and we're sitting there playing, and I beat him. And this is a big deal because the guys literally had never been beaten before. They had been playing just as long as I had since the games, Red and Blue first came out, and no one has ever beaten him. Like, some of his other friends had literally given up trying. Like, he's like, "You guys want to play Pokemon?" They're like, no, because we can't beat you.
Right.
I was the only one that was. I was the one that was, dumb enough to keep, hitting my head against that brick wall, and eventually I was going to make some headway, and eventually I beat him, and we all tell this story sometimes, and he goes, I was just sitting on the bed of the hotel room, and I just go, holy shit, and my wife and his girlfriend look at him and go, what? And he goes, he's about to beat me. And they're like, what? And sure enough, like, from the other room in the bathroom, you hear me go, yeah!
Just like that was the best thing too, right? The Wi-Fi part of it, where you could at least be in the other room and be able to do that. So that's awesome. Like, I wonder what the look on his face was. I wonder if it was just like sheer disbelief, like, holy shit, I'm gonna lose. And
I've wound up beating him a couple of times since then too. So I've got that win record up. It's still a little bit lopsided in the loss record.
It might be a little lopsided, but at least you got one victory or a couple victories now. That's all that matters. You can't say he can't say he's undefeated, at least. That's all you gotta say.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember with Pokemon specifically, I got into the trading card game, and then there was this comic book shop that I would go to for like Pokemon tournaments and stuff like that. Like, they would have, card tournaments and all that stuff. And I got really big into that for quite a few years. But then there was also people that would bring, of course, their Game Boys, trade Pokemon, do all that stuff. The only problem back then was you'd have the link cable, but if you were beating somebody, you basically had to look them in the face as you're beating them. Like, at least there's no, the online is like, anonymous. Like, you're basically just whooping everybody's ass and they can't see you or whatever. When you beat a dude staring at him and he's just sitting there visually getting pissed and you can see it, and he's just like, he's just biting his lip like, motherfucker, like, just, that's the only downside. You're like, I'm sorry I'm beating you right now, but again, you kind of get that satisfaction of it. But it works the same way though too. If you're getting your ass beat, I'm sure I had, my wife always makes fun of me when I play games that require a lot of like mental or physical. Like when I play Rock Band, she just laughs at my face. She'll just stare at me and go, "You make the most ridiculous faces playing that game." So, and I'm sure it's the same thing playing any competitive game though. It's always going to be like that. You always have that game face and everything. So
yeah, my wife used to laugh at me whenever she first noticed I was doing it, because I focus in and my jaw has a tendency to go slack. And she's like, "You look like you're just about to start drooling in a second." I was like, "I know what I'm doing."
Yeah, apparently I like bite my lip or something happens with my jaw and my wife's just like, "You look fucking ridiculous." Like, I'm going to take a picture of just how you look, and I just want you to see how I see you when you play games at times, especially when I play, like I said, when I was playing Halo 5, she would just come in and get out of the computer and she's just like, "You should see how you look right now. You look ridiculous." I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to win here and it's not super easy to do this." So yeah, that's always a fun thing. So then so obviously you continued, like you had Game Boy Advance SP, PlayStation. Did you ever go back to Nintendo? Did you ever go Xbox route or anything?
I did eventually get a GameCube, probably around 2004 in that area. I actually just bought an Xbox a couple of years ago because really I didn't really care for it. Like, there was a small handful of games on the original Xbox that I wanted, like Shenmue 3 and the SNK versus Capcom SBC Chaos.
Right.
So I've never been good at fighting games, but I love playing them. But I'll never take one online. So I stick to arcade mode. But,
yeah. Yeah, avoid that online, especially with the fighting games. That's where you just get left behind in the dust and just realize, why do I play this?
Exactly. But there was a couple of those that I was like, okay, see, these are Xbox exclusives. I really kind of want to play these, but I really just don't want to get an Xbox. So I just kind of avoided it. And same with the 360. I never really cared for it. Never really cared for the Xbox One. And I can say at least that I've tried it and I played it. Like, my cousin would bring his 360 over to the house every so often, and it wasn't for me. And so I kind of stayed on the split between Nintendo and PlayStation. But I did get an original Xbox a few years ago for a really good deal, and wound up getting those two games that I really wanted when I was younger when it came out. So I'm pretty happy with it. I bought a couple of extra games for it since then, and I've discovered a couple of other good ones, like Crimson Skies is a whole lot of fun.
Yes, it is. It's a great game.
And I've got Fable, but I haven't started it yet, but that's probably the next RPG I'm going to dip my toe into, is starting that.
Yeah, Fable, like Xbox, again, it was weird because I remember Xbox Live, I think, was just my big thing. Like, I just loved Halo 2. Like, Halo 1 obviously wasn't online, but Halo 2, like, when that happened, I remember playing Halo 2 daily for a year straight. I remember Christmas morning, I woke up and played around. Like, I would play every single day. And, the Xbox, other than, like, the Halos and stuff, like, it had some decent games. But, again, you're right. Like, it wasn't this vast library or whatever, because PS2 at that time was so dominant. Like, all of your big, big games went there. Still some good games on the original Xbox, but nothing that's, like... It sucks, too, because when some people look at nostalgia, like, you're thinking more PlayStation 2 stuff. Like, Xbox has good games, believe me. Like, there are, Knights of the Old Republic right there. Like, people still talk about how awesome that game is, and it was only on Xbox at the time. Now you can get it on friggin' iPad if you want, so whatever, go get it there. But yeah, it's just, there was a couple good games, but like you said, you're right. Like, it was back then, that was kind of where there was more... I would say more console exclusivity as far as like there was good games on every system, but and of course the major games were on all of them, but like, GameCube had ridiculous good games, even not just Nintendo games as well. Like, that was back when Nintendo had awesome third party support. So Capcom putting Resident Evil 4 first on GameCube was Like, that game is incredible, and it's still good. I could still play and beat that game.
I still haven't played it. Like, I've only beaten Resident Evil 1, the director's cut. I have it for PlayStation. I've probably beaten it like 4 or 5 times, but we rented Resident Evil 2, got up to the point where you're underground fighting the giant crocodile. It killed us, and then we had to take it back. I bought 3, but was barely able to get into it, and I just kept getting killed by the Nemesis, and I don't think I played another... Did I? No, I haven't played another Resident Evil since then.
So what you need to do is, after this podcast is over, you need to call out of work and go buy RE4 and just do that. That's what you should do. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say RE4. It's that and Mario 64 are the 2 games that I've bought on pretty much every platform that they've come out on. Like, they re-released RE4, it was on GameCube at first. I played and beat it probably 4 or 5 times on GameCube. Then they released it on PS2. Played it, beat it like 3 or 4 times on PS2. Then they had the Wii version, so I did that. And every time they it just like Mario 64. I when it came out on DS, I bought it. When it came out on Wii Virtual Console, I bought it. Like, every time they re-release Mario 64 and Resident Evil 4, those are the 2 games that I buy. And of course, on Xbox, what happens? Xbox One, they had a Resident Evil bundle sale, had 1, 4, 5, 6, like all the Resident Evils for like $20. And I was like, might as well, because I need Resident Evil 4 on Xbox One as well, right? So, no, seriously though, like, if you catch Resident Evil 4 on, do you have now do you have PS4 and stuff? Is that kind of where you're at now?
Yeah.
Yeah, they re-released it on PS4. If you catch it on a digital sale, it is literally in my opinion, one of the best games I've ever played. It is so good. It still holds up. It's such a good game. And, it's very different from the other Resident Evil games. Like, that's where I think it got where it sparked a new level of interest. The only problem is then 5 and 6 came out, which weren't as good. But 4 is really special. Like, it's a really, really good game. So definitely check that out. So now so obviously you have PS4 now, and you talked about earlier Mario Maker. So did you get like a Wii and Wii U and all that as well?
I got a Wii, yeah, and we wound up having to sell it at one point, and I wound up getting a Wii U, so we got a couple of extra Wii games for it since it was backwards compatible. So
right.
We got a couple of Wii remotes for it, and because my wife really wanted to play Animal Crossing, and I take that back. No, there is it's a Resident Evil spin-off game, the Umbrella Chronicles.
Yeah, Umbrella Chronicles, which was like the on-rail shooter or whatever.
Yeah, so we found it at GameStop one day, and it came with the peripheral for it, the one that looks like Chris's gun.
Yeah.
And she obsessed with, just like, this is mine. I am playing this. So she loves that, and we've got both of the House of the Dead collections for the Wii. So House of the Dead Overkill and House of the Dead 2 and 3 bundle. And she's like, come on, play House of the Dead with me. Come on. I'm like, I got home from work. At that time I was working 2 jobs. It's late. I'm like, I'm so tired. She's like, just play House of the Dead with me for like an hour. Come on.
That was a good thing about the Wii at the time, is that the fact that, they had the light gun games and stuff on like PS1 and PS2 and all that stuff, but then it was like $90 because you had to buy the gun and the game, and like, it was just so expensive, and you had this secondary gun. But that was like kind of a cool thing with the Wii, even though it didn't have the greatest game library or whatever. Like, you had those gems, especially the shooters, like, like the arcade style shooters, House of the Dead. I mean, they made Resident Evil spin-offs, they made Dead Space spin-offs. Like, they did all these different like on-rail shooters, and because it was just easy, it worked. And, of course you had the peripherals where you just snap it in, and do that. And they did the same thing when they did Resident Evil 4. They added motion controls. But yeah, nobody wanted to do that. Just, it wasn't the greatest, but like, no, those like arcade style shooters were awesome. And we, eventually ended up bringing those back, which is great.
Yeah, but I do like playing those, but because whenever we go to an arcade or anything that's got an arcade, she's like, let's find Time Crisis. Come on, someone's got to have some kind of Time Crisis here. And we'll sit and we'll pump just a few dollars in the Time Crisis trying to play through whatever version of it we find. She loves those. And I've recently gotten her into side-scrolling beat-em-ups. So she was like, well, we should play more games together. I said, yes, we should. So I'm sitting here in my game room right now, and I picked up the NES controllers and we're going to play something. So I slapped in Ninja Turtles, the arcade game.
There you go.
She's not really a Ninja Turtles fan. She's like, all right, this is fun. I enjoy this. Okay, we got more like this. So I pulled up the Super Nintendo, threw in Sunset Riders. She was like, all right, this is fun.
Right.
I want to do more like this. So a few weeks ago, I got Turtles in Time, and she's like, "This is the best thing ever." She's like, "We need to." We ran through it in one go, and she's like, "Can we do it again?" I was like, "Yeah." So we played through it again, just immediately right after.
You should just go back and get her Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the game, and just be like, this is what I had to grow up with. Like, that's what you should do. Just give her that. No, like, that was another thing, too. That was a whole genre. Like, I remember specifically more arcade stuff, but, like, they had the 4-player Simpsons one. They had the 4-player X-Men one, and it was just, dude, like, talk about pumping quarters into a game, like, those types of games. And, of course, when they brought them to home consoles, some of them were ported well. Some weren't. Like, some were real bad, but some of them were ported well. And, yeah, it was just awesome that, those side-scrolling beat-em-ups, especially when you had 2 players that could do it with you, or at least if you had a buddy at the arcade who was willing to pay as much as you were to keep going and beat the game. Because that's the other thing, too. It's like, hey, man, how much money you got? You got enough money to get through this shit? No? Well, I got to find somebody else. I can't trust you to, like, bail on me halfway through because you ain't got any more money to beat the game with me. So, but that's the beauty of the home console versions. Don't have to worry about that.
I think my stepbrother took about $5 each one time and just ran through the Punisher in the arcade. So one of us is the Punisher, the other is Nick Fury, and just running through that. And that is actually a really fun beat 'em up too. And no one ever really talks about it that often.
Yeah, the other thing too is, like, they made so many of them, and, like, obviously I'm sure some of them were just reskinned games. Like, I'm sure all they did was, like, instead of Wolverine, you're playing as Punisher. They just reskinned people and just kept pumping those games out because, especially the 4-player varieties, because they were just, everybody was into them and everybody could play. And, that whole genre obviously isn't as relevant anymore. I'm trying to think of recent, like, side-scrolling beat-em-up games like that.
There was this on PS3 and 360. You had the Scott Pilgrim, which was more like River City Ransom.
Right.
And actually, I don't know if it's on Xbox One or not. It should be, but on PS4, it was for free. Final Fantasy 15 had a spin-off where it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but you play as Noctis, your main character. Mm-hmm. His dad is the king, so when he was younger, he had his own kind of crew that he ran with and did stuff. So the premise of the game is it's a Noctis as a kid, and he asks his dad for a story. So his dad tells him a story about him and his friends going out fighting monsters, and that's what you're playing as, and it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, too.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think if that was it might be on Xbox One, it might not be, to be honest, I'm not sure. Like, and that's the other thing, too, like, the Final Fantasy games, I didn't play 15 yet. I heard 15 was cool. I'm kind of in a mode where I'm waiting literally until October to buy anything new, and I'm just kind of going through backlog stuff. But, yeah, I mean, that's one game that also, too, I could probably wait for, like, a Game of the Year edition of that now, just because it's been out for almost a year. So it's like, let me just wait and see if all this stuff comes out, and then I'll just end up getting some Game of the Year edition later on for cheap, which is good, now. It's like...
Yeah, that's why I've held out on Fallout 4 for that, and it's been out for almost 2 years. Yeah, exactly. So next month they're coming out with the Game of the Year edition for that. So my birthday is in a few weeks, so I've told my wife, I said I want that Super Nintendo Mini for my birthday. I said, if we can't get it, Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition. Yeah,
Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition, that's about 150 hours probably worth a good game there. So that was the funny thing is I bought Fallout 4, I bought the season pass, and just neglected to play it. Like, I just completely forgot about playing it. And then eventually I got back to it and everything, so.
And the first RPG I ever played was Mario RPG, and so never having played one before, I'm like, all right, what is this? I tried playing it like a regular Mario game, and realized really quickly you can't do that. And it wasn't much later that when I played Final Fantasy VIII, I'm like, oh, oh, this is how you play this. Oh, this is fun. And that became one of my favorite genres is RPGs. And I have a funny story in regards to one of them. My friend of mine let me borrow, for PS1, let me borrow Lunar 2 Complete. And I was like, he's like, play through this. This game is awesome. So I did, and I was like, it's now one of my favorite games ever. So a local game store, Game Exchange, had a copy, and it was, I think, $70 or $80.
Right.
And again, didn't have a job, but I saved up some money and store credit of stuff that I'd traded in that I didn't play anymore. Finally had enough to get it. So I go down there. There's only one other guy in the store because again, it's in a podunk town, so it doesn't get a whole lot of business. So I would just go and just hang out and talk to the guy that worked there. Me and him would just shoot the breeze every so often.
Right.
But there was one other guy in there, and he was at the counter, and I'm like, he's almost done. I'm just going to get behind him. I'm going to get my game, and he's getting rung up, and he's like, I was like, all right, is there anything else you were looking for? And he goes, yeah, let me get that Lunar 2 right there. And I was,
what?
And he pays for it, walks out, and he's like, the clerk's like, oh, hey, man, how's it going? What you looking for? I was like, it just walked out the door, and he's like, oh.
Dude, that sucks.
Man.
That sucks. Like, that would bum me out. Like, to hear that, I would just, I mean, to me, though, I would audibly just be like, motherfucker, and I would just walk right out the door. Like, god damn it, this sucks.
I was super bummed out. Eventually, I've gotten it, and I've played through it again, but I've got both the PlayStation version, and I wound up getting the original Sega CD version of it too. So I'm good and happy now, but I was just so bummed out at that time because I'm like, I loved this game,
yeah, and I saved.
The only reason I came in here was for this today.
Exactly. Like, I tried so hard, and then as soon as you get there, it's just like, not soon enough, buddy, and I'm just gonna buy this right in front of you. So that used to happen at the game store, but it wasn't with like rare stuff. Like, people would do that all the time when I worked at the game store. Would come in, and that was back when pre-ordering games mattered, because if you straight didn't pre-order a game, you may not friggin' get one. And like, I had people come in all the time, be like, yo man, you got this game? That dude right behind you, right in front of you, he just bought the last one. He's like, good, all right man, I got it, and like just left all sad. And I would see it, but like, especially with the harder find games, right? Like, this is a game that next week we would have a copy of, you know what I mean? It's just right now it wasn't there, but like, I can't imagine an older style game, like a retro game, and that happening. So that would suck.
And this was like 2003, so it wasn't that old of a game at that point. It had just come out a couple of years prior, but it had been there for months. And I'm like, no one else probably knows about this game. No one else is going to buy it. And just that day, if I'd gone a day earlier,
right,
I would have gotten it. But as this guy just right ahead of me, just like, yeah, let me get that. I'm like, oh,
right,
man,
like it's just the worst luck possible. So what are you playing nowadays? Like, what are the games you've been playing lately?
The only really new game I've gotten so far this year is Persona 5. My wife and I are both obsessed with the whole series ever since we got Persona 3 a few years back. So we both went through 3 and 4, and we were like, we're getting 5. We got 5 pre-ordered, right? And so that's all I've pre-ordered now, is just something that's obscure that there may not be a lot of copies of, like a Persona 5. So right. I made sure to get that, and we both were kind of tag teaming it. So she would play it one day, I'd play it the next day, and she'd get it one day, I'd play it the next day, and we were at a point we were kind of neck and neck with it, and eventually she pulled ahead of me, then I'd pull ahead of her in it, but we both finished it. We both got the true ending to it. We both already started New Game Plus. And so that's been really what we've really played a lot of this year. I've been playing a lot of stuff that I'll get on PlayStation Plus for free. So I've just a couple weeks ago I finished Until Dawn, which was a lot of fun, a lot more fun than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, that was a game that I think surprised a bunch of people.
And I'm playing through Just Cause 3 right now since it was free this month, and I'm like, all right, this is pretty good.
It's probably pretty good now. When I got it, I was actually really sad because I bought Just Cause 3, and obviously I know everybody's going to say the PS4 more powerful than the Xbox One, which it is. But that game ran like trash on console. Like, obviously they've optimized and updated it now, but when that game first came out, it was a frame rate disaster. And I I remember just being sad, like I was playing it, and it just, the whole point of that game is to blow shit up in the most ridiculous way possible. And every time I would do it, the frame rate just drops so bad. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm just going to get rid of this. And I'm sure eventually it'll come out and have all these patches and be better. But yeah, now I'm sure it's quite a bit better.
It runs pretty good from what I've seen so far, at least. I haven't I'm not that far into it, so I haven't got anything too crazy just yet.
Right.
But I've had where I'll set off, chain reactions of explosions. Like I've got the rocket launcher, and we'll hit a fuel tank, and it'll blow up and knock over a couple other fuel tanks, which will blow up. But really, probably one of my favorite games I've got now is if I'm ever bored, I'm like, I want to play something, but I don't want to get too involved with it. I've got the Pinball Arcade on my PS4, and I will just sit there and I was like, all right, it's been 2 hours. I've just sitting here been playing pinball. This is great. Let's do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody has those games. For me, that's Skate 3. Like, it doesn't matter. I could just play Skate 3 and just all of a sudden I'm just like listening to a podcast or just, bullshitting around, and just like, that's the one game that is just mind numbing, but still fun for me. And it's still like, just, it doesn't matter if I've played it. I wish I could see the hours I've clocked in that game, but it's just, again, mind numbing fun, and just, it's a really good game. So.
My next thing is I don't know when it's going to happen, but I am going to get a Switch at some point.
You can wait for a little bit. Don't worry about it. Just take your time. Like I have a Switch, and Zelda's great. Not gonna lie, Zelda's great. But yeah, after Zelda, not a whole lot of stuff for you to buy a $300 console for. Mario Odyssey will make some things quite a bit better, but again, like, I wouldn't say wait till the end of its life cycle, but I mean, obviously next year is going to be better. Like, there's that new Yoshi game coming out. Mario Odyssey looks incredible. Like, it really does. Like, it looks insane. Yes. And, I got a Switch only because I sold all my Wii U stuff. I got a Switch, got Zelda, beat Zelda, fantastic game. But then after that, I was just like, all right, not much else I really want to play at this moment. I got my son Splatoon 2. He loves it to death. I haven't really given it a shot, so I can't really say it's a good or bad game in my own opinion, but I
really liked the first Splatoon. That was a lot of fun.
And I felt bad, like, for him, because I sold the Wii U 3 or 4 months after I got him Splatoon for Christmas. So it's like, I told him, like, I know this sucks. I'm going to sell the console that you just got a game for like 3 months ago. I'm really sorry, but as soon as Splatoon 2 comes out, I will buy it for you the day it comes out. No questions asked. He's like, deal. That's fine. So ever since I got it, he's been playing that. But yeah, I mean, Mario Odyssey, that will boost a lot. Not saying the Switch is like hurting for sales right now, but when Mario Odyssey comes out, that is going to blow up. Just get one then. They'll probably have some sort of bundle or something for it. Like, they just released the Splatoon 2 bundle in the US, which is cool. Like, Walmart has it, which I'm sure they'll have some special Mario version or whatever. So you could always just get that later on. So
I don't know how I've avoided spoilers for Breath of the Wild as long as that I have, because I'm not actively trying to avoid them, but so far I've avoided them. So I don't know. I know little bits and pieces, but I don't know anything exactly what happens with the story. So
just avoid
saving myself on that.
Yeah, just avoid it. You'll be fine. It's good. And then I couldn't tell you, like, wait for the Switch version compared to playing it on Wii U, because I'm sure it's like just marginally better on Switch, but yeah, speaking of toilet time, that's where the Switch comes in play. Awesome. It's like, I'm just gonna go around the house and play this wherever. That's probably the most advantage thing of it. So, just wait a little bit. You're fine. No big rush. Wait for like two more big games for it, and then it'll definitely be worth the purchase. So if people want to check you out, do you have like a PlayStation name you want to throw out there or anything like that?
Yeah. So I'm at okay, so I came up with this when I was, really weeby and a teenager and dark. Yeah, I'm just too lazy to change anything. So it's Daimaoh22, so DAIMAOH 22.
And I'll also have links in the show notes and everything for that as well if people want to check you out and everything. So, dude, I appreciate you being on the show. I know you're really big, you supported everything I've done. You've, liked the page from the very beginning, and I was super happy to get you on the show, man. Thank you so much for being on.
Dude, thank you for having me. This is the first time I've done anything like this. This is a lot of fun. I really enjoy podcasts as a whole, so I'm that kind of guy that will listen to it, and if someone gets asked a question, I'm like, oh, okay, well, how would I have answered this? So it's good to actually be the one on the opposite end, actually not sounding crazy and being actually able to answer things.
There you go, absolutely. So, and you did a good job, man. So again, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mitch.
All right, and again, thank you, Tyler, for being on the show. Of course, I will have show notes in there for his PlayStation handle, so that way you guys can check him out on PlayStation Network. If you guys want to be on the show just like he was, again, send me a tweet at GUG Podcast on Twitter, or go ahead and send me a tweet personally at MitchPower1116 on Twitter. Again, thank you so much, Tyler. He's, again, been one of the biggest supporters of the show, and I'm really glad I was able to get him on. And, of course, I'll be back next week with another new episode. Again, subscribe. Share it with a buddy, review it on iTunes, definitely let me know what's going on and what you guys like about the show, and I'll be back with you guys next week. See ya.